4, we believe, soon. Bobby Manning's going to be joining us from the Garden. We got Josue Pavone.
He's so hyped. That's what it is.
Pumped.
He is pumped. He said something ridiculous in our chat. It was like so green teamery.
One thing. Just one?
Yeah, just one. Yeah, only one. It was like, I'm so glad this team's back to blowing out teams.
All right, I'll wait for you guys to say. I know exactly what line you're talking about.
Oh, God. Yeah, it's a miracle if Bobby only says one ridiculous thing in our chat.
Yeah. Glad Celtics are back to destroying teams.
We'll wait and let him defend himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Josue Pavone, a freshly shorn Josue Pavone, fresh from a wedding.
Yeah, survived it.
ATL.
We're glad he made it back. Jimmy Toscano, of course.
It wasn't his wedding, ladies. So just so you know, like he's
I'm
still very much not married. Yeah,
still there.
Yeah, getting ready for the summer.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly. So Bobby will be joining us in a little bit, but look, another feel-good game for the Celtics here. You get a Houston team that's Houston, which is great. Then you get a Charlotte team, and again, this was a bit of a bummer for a couple reasons. This was supposed to be the Gordon Hayward return.
Yeah.
Gordon and Terry coming in here, revenge, blah, blah, blah. And just a chance to see him. And then, see if we could injure him ourselves,
Right. We didn't get there in time.
The irony
when you go this far into the season before you see Hayward, there's a chance where you're going to miss that opportunity.
The whole time it's like Kyrie, he just skips them.
Yeah.
So in this case again,
he's gonna skip all of them too. It's not good.
Yeah, all of them. So no Gordon, you had Terry, but I mean, geez, man, well, they're obviously Lamelo and Gordon and Monk. Right?
Yeah.
Monk. Yeah, that's a big one too. Monk, he plays well when Hayward's out, especially. He can be consistent.
No scoring there. No scoring on that team right now. So Terry did his best. He hung in there, but then they stepped on their throats. When did the Celtics pull away in this game? Who entered the game?
I'm not going there. I'm not going there. I'll tell you what. Look, these holograms are getting out of control. Yeah. These holograms are unbelievable now. The way that they can make them look like
so lifelike. They hit threes and block shots. But look, it's not. It's unfair to call it the Romeo and the Celtics second unit. What really happened is obviously Charlotte is so ridiculously undermanned. When they went to their bench, the cupboard is bare. So obviously the Celtics were able to take advantage, and they did. But it was good to see Romeo minutes. It was good to see the Celtics second unit play well. It was good to see passing again. Holy wow, did they jack some threes tonight? You guys see the total?
Yeah.
I saw they hit a lot of threes too.
54.
If this game was close, they hit 60 easily. Easily hit 60.
54 3-point attempts. And again, 29 assists following a 35 assist game the other night. So, and that was 47 attempted threes. So again, at the end of the day, you're seeing more of what you want to see, which is work the ball and shoot more threes, not fewer threes, regardless what the boomers will tell you. Too many threes. It's not too many threes. It's too few threes. And this is really more of like the offense that you want to see here. We're going to bring in Bobby because Bobby likes threes. Right, Bobby?
Oh, yeah. He love it.
Bobby wants more three-pointers, right?
Yeah, definitely. This is what you want to see. Now, I think they've gone to the high end of things. We talked about last game. Like, they're number one by far in this last week and change in 3 points attempted. I don't know if you want to be that reliant on it, but it's way better than the shot profile that they had coming into this. And I said this in the Garden report that I did here on Friday. Not only are they shooting more threes, but like you guys want to see, they're getting it to Rob more too. So that's more shots at the basket too, rather than, mid-rangers. That matters just as much as the threes.
Cutting out that 18-footer that Stevens hates, right? I mean, just take 3 shots at the rim and shots from, behind the arc. And Brad Stevens goes to bed a happy man. So that's kind of what this team's starting to become. Inside-outside game. And again, if they can be aggressive and drive to the rim and then create those open threes with the kick out, then I'm fine. John talked about it last game. It's not the number of threes, it's how you get them. It's the quality of threes. So, you're still seeing a lot of that ball movement that we saw last game. Fournier's, still hot. Credit to him. He's still, automatic from 3, it feels like. So yeah, everything was working for them again. I mean, obviously, when you're missing the players that mean so much to you, like the players that mean to the Hornets are missing, like Hayward, Ball, Monk, there's really no team in the NBA that can make up for that amount of offense that just all of a sudden you're zapped from. So obviously, you take you take it with a grain of salt. But again, this is a game that the Celtics, Nick Gelso rolling in the ratings.
This guy runs the company. Would this qualify as hostile work environment?
He does run the company. That's true.
Yeah. Idiotic take.
I don't know what take from the guy in charge.
I don't know,
and that should make you feel good, John. Speaking of going to bed happy tonight, you should feel good about that.
I mean, listen. Obviously, Fournier's 3-point touch is a huge booster for this team coming off the bench. That's a huge advantage, something that they didn't have all season long. But what I love in particular in that first half was, he was also doing that, but also getting that ball moved to, making sure everyone got their touches. And I think that's a humongous boost for this second unit because you put him with someone like Pritchard. How you guys know how I feel about Pritchard when he's on
future starting point guard,
getting everyone a couple more years. Could happen, Jimmy. When he's making sure everyone gets their touches, along with someone like Fournier, I think I saw Fournier correct someone where they were supposed to be. That's like the new guy at the job is telling someone who's already been there all season long where they need to be. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. I mean it as he's into this. He's taking on this role as that secondary guy, and of course you mix him in with the starting unit, and I just think when the threes aren't falling, that's when the Celtics going to be in a tough spot. But obviously that wasn't the case today. Fournier had a lot to do with that. Payton Pritchard had a lot to do with that. And of course, as well, I mean, mixing him with that second unit, it's a really tough that's a tough group to go against for opposing second units, So, and especially when they're shorthanded, like John's about to say right now.
No, I want to spin the wheel on it though. No, because I agree with it. It makes the second unit different, but I want to spin the wheel on this, and you guys decide which direction we go. I ran a Twitter poll on.
I missed it.
I ran a Twitter poll and just asking, what do you think is the best trade deadline development for the Celtics? Okay, the questions were the acquisition of Fournier. The options were the acquisition of Fournier, Rob Williams being inserted as a starter, and Romeo Langford being alive. Now, Romeo was the joke option, but obviously when you do put the joke option in there, people think it's funny, so they click it. But him being alive, again, is something I've wanted to see. Not enough tonight to make a judgment, but we will talk about his opinion. But of those three guys right now, you saw something from everybody. I know what I think is the best so far, but I mean, and you'd be surprised.
I just voted.
Answer, but whether you answer that question or you just want to talk about each of those guys tonight, I'll spin the wheel. You guys go. Which one do you want to talk about?
We'll spin the wheel.
It's Fournier by far. It's not even close. You think of a guy going on an 11-16 tear. What do you end up hitting? 9 straight threes between these two games? No one on this roster could even dream of doing that before the deadline. So
certainly not Semi, Grant, Neesmith, or Romeo, as you texted us.
Nobody on this roster can catch a lob either.
Yeah, I know, but you'd rather have a dead-eye three-point shooter on the wing. They can add to the equation here. And, the same Rob that we've seen for most of the season. What do they add? 5 more minutes by moving him to the starting lineup? Again, I'm not knocking the impact.
Playing with the starters, but that's fine.
No, I think kind of are knocking the impact a little bit.
Bobby had a horrific tweet earlier today. I'm sure he'll get into it, but on Rob.
Oh, I missed it.
What was it?
It was exactly pretty much what you said. It was Rob's averaging 30 minutes a game and nothing has changed. First of all, he's not averaging 30 minutes a game, and I would say that a lot has changed, regardless of whether or not they're turning into wins. I think a lot has changed in the way that this team competes out there, in the way that they score, and the way that they are, in my opinion, improving on both ends of the court, which will lead to more wins. Had Rob been playing 25 to 30 minutes all season, I think they have a better record than they do today.
So that's been a bigger impact than Fournier's arrival?
It's hard to say. I guess we'll find out. I mean, I think
it's funny.
I think both are important. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's obviously both, but I think you didn't have a Fournier before. You had Rob this whole time, plus Tice, plus Thompson. You'd probably rather
you're talking
still
about
have
impact. You're talking about literally, 0 to a new player to increasing somebody's minutes. So the impact is going to be a little bit greater with a brand new player.
I believe it or not, I'm actually leaning Fournier, but I do think Bobby's saying again, everything is a landslide, you know, is you know, it's not a landslide.
Mad, right?
What I do think the evidence on the Rob side of things is Rob, as soon as he was given more minutes prior to the trade deadline, made the most of him. As soon as he was inserted in the starting lineup and everybody around him miraculously got better. And now that you have, you know, a little bit more balance and a little bit more, you know, another playmaker in Fournier, now you've got second unit and everything kind of clicking at the same time. I do think there's a legit trickle-down effect there with Rob and what he brought to the starting lineup. That being said, Fournier has impressed the crap out of me with how not just his shooting, but just his savvy, his IQ, how quick the ball gets out of his hands, his playmaking ability.
Extend him. Sign it now.
Those back-to-back lobs to Rob, one of them was in his hands for 0.2 seconds, you know, just boom, boom, you know, like it's really clever stuff that he's doing. And you can see it just the way he plays his angles. He actually is, dare I say, kind of Hayward-esque a little bit in that regard. Yeah. And I didn't see it. I didn't know it as much because, as Jimmy pointed out prior to the trade, there were not a single YouTube highlight of Evan Fournier existed. It said every time you'd go looking for it, it'd say "file not found." You know, like nobody knew.
You would just get Aaron Gordon,
the underrated size,
and an underrated defender.
Yep.
Yeah.
You saw him block
that a lot of people overlooked. You know, they just talked specifically about his outside touch, but he can keep. He can keep up with guys, you know. I mean, he's not a long defender, you know, per se, but I think when you couple that with that second unit and how much this team needs that so much, it's going to amplify what he does. Will trickle down not only with that second unit, but of course with the starters, you know. And he will be at the end of games with those guys, you know, to finish games.
For sure, and it wasn't a huge deal, but he got to play and spell those minutes with the young guys in the fourth quarter when they were up 27. And he asked, was it going to be another walk of shame game? Was this all going to fall apart with Nesmith and Langford in there? And they actually extended the lead by the end of the night. So that was important, too, for him to be able to go out there, allowed the guys like Romeo, Nesmith, Mo Wagner, those type of guys to get some run, while not just completely capsizing like we saw earlier in the year. And still, Fournier only finished with 22 minutes. So,
well, nobody needed it. That's the whole thing. All the minutes will be down tonight because the fourth, luckily they
fourth quarter was out of reach.
Yeah, they didn't have to worry about it. So that was good. And again, it kept everybody down. You've got Philly and then New York with the back-to-back coming up. So anytime you can cut down minutes, how many times have they had a blowout win where they didn't have to slide the starters back in? It was nice to go the whole fourth quarter, not having to worry about it. You know, that's is that the first one? Maybe two.
Yeah, there's not a lot.
Maybe two. Yeah.
Usually,
first time in forever.
Yeah.
Usually you're watching the clock.
He was mad he had to go back in there. It looked like he was like taking his time. He's like, "Coach, this game is done." But all right, I'll go back in. Yes, I guess I'll play it out.
It was
out of hand fast.
So the Fournier stuff again, you know, I was super impressed with again. And it's amazing because, like I said, you know, prior to that game where he caught fire, he's 1 of 6, kind of trending towards another dud of a game. And then he, you know, lights it up in the fourth quarter. I think he was good instantly. And then he had those 10 straight threes, which was one off the Celtics record. I mean, missed a couple late, but I mean, still all around great game. I do want to get everyone's thoughts on Romeo. I know we tease a lot, you know, that Romeo is, you know, is not real. But in fact, he was real. Now, in addition to his play, which again, you only have a little snapshot of it, so it's hard to say too much. What I did find encouraging is that his first game back off of the COVID conditioning thing, they wanted to get him in right away. And so he already leapt past you know, Nesmith in the rotation, which is not super surprising, but it certainly tells you something. But it was clear that they wanted to get him run. Brad even talked about, I'm giving him a couple stints tonight. So it wasn't he's cleared to play, go sit next to Nesmith and Taco. He was cleared to play with a design on him actually getting minutes, with the design on him getting enough minutes to build up some stamina for hopefully what would be more meaningful minutes. So it leads me to believe prior to his COVID setback, they did have an idea that Romeo could come in and contribute in some way on this team, or at least a desire to have him do so.
Yeah, for sure. And we saw that. I mean, his defense is obviously the part that we all want to see unfold. We want to see him develop, but it's so frustrating because there's not a whole lot of time. I mean, just for him to get his legs back, I think is going to take some time leading into the playoffs. And we're not quite sure if he's there development-wise to keep up with some of the, top talents or at least top tier teams. The Eastern Conference has got dramatically better over the past year, and Romeo hasn't. Obviously, he's been sidelined, so it's a tough spot. I mean, it's a great glimpse of the future, I guess. It's still, we have to see more of it, but for him to come in with that sort of energy, the putbacks and the what was it? The block.
Bridges can jump, man.
Yeah, that was no joke.
Yeah, he got on the way.
That is like for someone to do that has been out that long and come in your first minute, your first stint. It's impressive, and I guess it shows that obviously he hears the talk that's going on around the city, and it looks like he's developed some thick skin over the past year or so, and he's ready to prove himself to everyone.
Yeah, everybody was blown away by his defense coming into the league. That wasn't something people thought would be a strength of his game, and he's still continuing to flash that, not only positionally, but with the dynamic athleticism to make a play like that, steal later in the game. That's what's going to get him into the rotation ultimately, because there's an opportunity here between him, Nesmith, Semi Ojeleye eventually when he gets back as like a fourth forward spot. Not a ton of minutes there toward playoff time, but it's not out of the question that if they can ramp him up conditioning-wise and he responds well to all of that over the final 20 games or so, you get more blowouts like this that he can be inserted into the fourth. There's an outside chance that he could end up making the playoff rotation, but it's going to be an uphill battle for him for sure. He's just so limited right now, and there's so little time left that it will be tough for him to break into this in a big way. But tonight's a start.
But there is, though, that's the thing is right now, and it's a perfect opportunity because Nesmith didn't make the most of his minutes, so he's not going to get him back, I don't think. And Semi being out almost guarantees, even with the acquisition of Fournier, that Nesmith's going to get in. That Romeo's going to get in there, I think, in this range of 12 to 15 minutes a game to start every game. I don't think you're going to get I don't think you're going to get he sits for the next two DNP-CD and then comes in for 5 or 6. If he does, then that probably means he's not in their plans. But if he's right back out there against Philly on Tuesday, playing, again, those 2 stints, as Brad kind of pointed out there, which is roughly what you'll be looking at, a little second quarter and a little third into the fourth run, that is good enough to start, I think, and then you let him build off of that. If he goes away, that's rough. Again, it depends how long Semi's out there, but I don't think it's that hard, Bobby, to crack the rotation personally because there's not much there. You're really only competing with who? Semi Ojeleye and Aaron Nesmith at that point. And that's why I want to see him because his highest level of play, I think, gives you at least the defensive Semi with some offensive potential to boot, and we'll see whether that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, the greatest trick Romeo ever played was convincing the world he didn't exist, right? that's the saying. And listen,
you had that in your mind.
He goes out there today, drains his first shot, the 3-pointer, which was great to see him, have a little bit of that. I know he missed the next 3, but he goes out there. Confidence is, a guy hasn't played in a year. I mean, he could have looked like Nesmith 2.0 out there, but he actually looked like he belonged. He was cool, calm, collected. He was that player that the Celtics can put on the opposing team's offensive guy and see if he can slow him down a bit. That's something that they lack. You talk about Romeo and now Fournier. That's 40 plus minutes now that you could potentially have in this rotation that you didn't have a couple weeks ago. So that's huge for a potential push here to the playoffs. And in terms of depth, if the Celtics can actually stay healthy, they look a lot more like the team in last year's bubble, playoff personnel-wise, than they have sort of floundering through the first, half plus of this season. So anything you get out of Romeo is a bonus. I mean, if you're talking about a guy that can give you 15 minutes off the bench, I mean, last week, John, I think you said, a lost season for Romeo. So
that's the worry. Yeah.
Right. That's the worry. Listen, we're not gonna go overboard here with his debut, but you got meaningful minutes. You got something that resembled an NBA player, which is great. And if they can build on that, and if he can stay healthy, because that's another guy that hasn't been able to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, then you've got an end of rotation sort of player there for the playoffs.
So that's all I was pointing out for today. Is the fear was when they were like, you got the vibe, didn't you guys? That they were like, you're not going to be seeing much of this guy. When they're like, wow, with the reconditioning stuff, the kind of feeling was like, I don't know what, if anything, we're getting from him. So I thought that ramp up might be, those last few games where he's had the COVID reconditioning designation. I thought that could last 2 and 3 weeks. It looks like Thompson's still in it, So that was the worry there, is that he might not even see the court for 2 weeks. The fact that he, on his first game cleared, he played again is the encouraging aspect for me. Yeah,
that's what I said about that fourth quarter, John. That's the only way they can get him back into things. Like, they don't have practice time, and even if they did, you want him at game speed more than practice speed. So any chance that they can get to fit him into this rotation, they're going to do it, just because that's the only way he can get back into the fold here. Like, those, I'm sure Stevens didn't love throwing him into the fire right away here, but they had no other choice with how jam-packed these games are. I'll say this too, Semi Ojeleye is expected to miss 10 games total, I think. He's already missed 5, so there'll be about 5 more games here, maybe more, if the injury continues to linger into that West Coast trip, for Langford to have steady run. And you're right, John. There isn't a whole lot of competition there when you think of where Neesmith's done. Yeah. Grant probably isn't interchangeable with him, because Langford gives you more wing versatility on the defensive side of the ball. So, like, the opportunity's here if he plays well over this next week.
Well, that's the thing. You're right, because now, Brad theoretically has the personnel more suited to play the type of game that he likes to play, particularly defensively.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Particularly defensively, when you've got a bunch of wings and that whole switchability thing. And I do think, Romeo fits into that really well for him if he can play, because now that you have Fournier, you've now all of a sudden, I don't want to say it's wing depth. You've added Romeo, who hasn't shown anything yet. But like I said, it allows you to do the things you want to do. Whether or not he's capable is, again, what these next 5, 6, 8, 10 games will show us, because you really do want him playing at a reasonable, reliable level when if and when you enter the playoffs. And again, the Charlotte situation we're talking about it beforehand, you have to think the path to the playoffs obviously gets easier here. Hayward's out a minimum 4 weeks. There's 5 weeks left in the season. That's a minimum 4 weeks. This is one of those, like, we'll check him at 4 weeks and be evaluated. It really sounds like his season is done.
Which is crazy, because he didn't even look to be in that much pain. Like, going up. Like, it was almost like he was. I felt he was almost like gonna walk it off, and now it's like,
what's a sprained foot, John? You're the closest to MD here. What is that?
It all depends what kind of mid-foot, where it's sprained. I didn't see what it was here, but
what is it? Foot muscles?
Huh?
Foot muscles? It's not an ankle.
No, it's the same thing. It's just there's different parts of the.
The foot has a billion bones in it.
It's a million different things that you could sprain there.
By the way, there's a million bones in the foot.
That's facts.
Yeah, but I mean, you're not spraining.
I know
bone.
A couple doctors.
There's a ton of ligaments and other things in there too. I mean, but it's very similar to ankle injury. Sometimes they call it foot, and it's really ankle. It's just which part is it? But I mean, you have those midfoot sprains, which really mess people up. And 4 week designation right away means they're pretty sure that
he'll be evaluated in 4 weeks, is what they said.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I mean, it looks like this is one of those, like, longer term situations.
So that leads me to my question: did the Celtics make the right decision?
Well, that's what's fair to talk about. And we were talking about on the thread, like, at what point do you stop saying bad luck and just say brittle?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fair question, and it drives a couple of my friends wild, because I like to play devil's advocate, and they were huge. Like, you have to re-sign Hayward, and honestly, it was a runaway. Like, it was a runaway that the Celtics made the wrong decision, right, leading up to like 2 days ago. But now it's like, okay, well, the reason why Celtics fans are going crazy and why Celtics fans weren't even really that upset was because, majority of Hayward's career was spent either injured or coming back from an injury, or not fully there, but, working through it. And to see him, thrive in Charlotte, that was like, wow, that's the Gordon Hayward that everyone thought the Celtics were getting and never actually got. And then he goes down with the foot injury, and like, okay, well, that's the Gordon Hayward that Celtics fans know. Because is it bad luck, or is it, like John said, is it that he's kind of brittle, or that, it doesn't take much for something to, go wrong in his body? It didn't, again, I mean, it's a lower body fluky kind of, ankle / foot.
He stepped on a foot, you said, right?
He stepped on Miles Turner's foot.
Of all people.
Which is hilarious.
Again, this is...
Really slipped that in there today, too. You see that?
This is almost all bad luck for him. It's just, like, uncanny luck.
Is it?
I mean, could you say the same for Langford with everything he's gone through?
Mean, like I said, so to me, things like Romeo, wrists and pinkies and whatever it was, those are flukier than rolling ankles and soft tissue injuries and things like that. That's usually something that is recurring. When people have those, you see them have them a lot of times. Like Gordon Gordon sprained that foot now twice. I mean, obviously that freakish break a few years ago is a different situation, but now that's twice on that ankle.
Broken hand.
And you know what? I mean, look, I mean, they weaken, you know, like once you sprain that stuff, we've all played some level of basketball. You sprain your ankle once, twice, 3 times. It's just never is right. You know, it just keeps getting worse and worse. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know with Gordon at this point. I mean, I feel like little things like what did he break a hand running into a screen? You know, like some of that stuff's finger. A little fluky, but I mean, it's basketball. You're going to roll these things. You're going to roll ankles all the time, you know, out of the court there.
He should be heavily taping his ankles, and he should be wearing high tops.
High tops to the knees.
Double laced. He should look like Cornet out there, but like times 2 with like with the support.
I mean, the thing about Hayward though, if the Celtics sign him and this happens, Celtics fans would be they'd be livid. They would be livid.
Well, that's the thing. It makes you feel better. Can I point
look at the stat line?
Yeah. Can I point one thing out, by the way? As we talk, just when we're talking about Gordon Hayward, it's really interesting. I know he started off the season kind of, you know, on fire, and he had, you know, a couple of big point, you know, games, and it was like, okay, he's unlocked his inner self. I mean, at the end of the day, if you go through the stats, he's averaging 34 minutes a game versus 33.5 with Boston, okay? He's getting 15 shots up a game versus 13.5 with Boston. His field goal percentage is slightly down. His three-point percentage is slightly up. His usage is roughly the same. He's really almost – his rebounding is down. His assists are identical. He's literally –
Then when? Last season?
This last season with this season is
well, he was
really
good last
statistically
season.
Not that far off.
So
it is interesting.
That's a great point by Jimmy. It shows too, like how great he was last year and how underrated that was.
But the narrative that leaving for Charlotte,
he got hurt again though.
But I'm saying the narrative that leaving for Charlotte unlocked him is a fallacy. He's pretty much been there what he was here, and so. This notion that I get to go there and be more of myself, he's not really doing anything different than he did last year.
There's 2 parts of it, though. I mean, being the front man isn't just about him taking a million shots. Like, he's setting up other teammates. He's the guy on the ball all the time there. And you look at the numbers, his importance there. He's missed 4 games. They're 1-3. Now, tonight you add that in. They're 1-4. Like he's been an important piece there on both ends of the floor and within the offense outside of scoring. He's just been a floor general for them, frankly.
Again, that's fine, but he was here at the times when he was out. He was always a secondary ball handler on this team. He was expected to do a lot with the ball and to be a playmaker as well. So I think it's fine if he's got a little bit more responsibility and or respect from his teammates for his role there. His overall, what it's doing for him and his career and who he is and getting to be the true best version of himself is a pretty marginal differse. So I don't know.
What's his percentages? He's probably like 50%.
No, like I said, his field goal percentage slightly down from 50 to 40, high 40s, and his 3-point percentage from 38 to 40. It's pretty close, but I mean, one and a half shot attempts more, and every other rebounding up, assists flat, almost everything is flat across the board, and minutes about the same. So he's being pretty much. I mean, it wasn't like he was not used here. I mean, this is who. Let's put it this way.
This is like what
it's the narrative, John.
He's a 26, 27 point per game scorer, whatever he was in Utah, and that the Celtics suppressed that. He's pretty much this guy, and he was this guy for the Celtics last year, which is a really good player.
I just think when he talked about being a featured player and wanting to be that, I just think it was more about the narrative than anything. It wasn't about the production. It wasn't about the role. It was about the fact that everyone was saying this is Tatum and Brown's team. And when Gordon Hayward first signed here, it was
too many wings.
He was supposed to be the one that's going to lead the obviously him and Kyrie, or originally it was supposed to be him and Isaiah Thomas, but it was supposed to be him and Kyrie. He got hurt when he came back. Even as he was working his way back, the narrative started to change. Okay, now Kyrie's, he's the mentor for these young rising superstars. It wasn't Kyrie and Hayward are the mentors. No, just Kyrie. And as he's trying to get himself back, he finally got himself back, put together his best season in Boston last year. But again, what's everyone remember? It's what have you done for my Celtics fans, right? What have you done for us lately? right? You got hurt in the postseason.
Yeah.
You know, in the postseason, you fought through, but obviously he wasn't the same player. Obviously, you forget what happened because 2 months went by, you know, from the NBA shutting down. So it was a lot going on. But again, at the end of the day, I just think it's the narrative. He doesn't like being that guy. He doesn't want to be known as the guy who's a size to the two rising superstars.
And let's be real, it was about that money, 120 million.
Yeah,
that was the big
you
one.
get the bag.
Yes.
Get the bag.
If that's the case, everything is garbage in terms of what you say. You know, this whole I went there for blah blah blah. It's nothing. If Boston wasn't prepared to offer the same thing, and then it's all nonsense. It's interesting to me that we've accepted that narrative when at the end of the day, he's pretty much the same guy on a worse team.
Well,
he and Terry share the load. It's not like he's clearly the one. And I got news for you, buddy. LaMelo's the headliner there when he's healthy, so you're already not the number one guy. You're about to cede control of the team to a kid, even younger than the ones who you didn't want to bring and give it to before.
Isn't that
to a
something?
ball, brother.
Yeah.
You never know.
Nonetheless. So good luck with that
contract, and he's like, "Hey, respect on paper, I'll take it."
I'll tell you though, it can be a breath of fresh air though to not only leave the Boston market, which was probably tough on him, but also to just kind of be on this young team without a lot of expectation, building something, playing a fun style. Like things got a little rigid starting last year here in Boston with the way they were playing offense. So there was probably a million different reasons that went into this, but at the end of the day, that money was the big one. And then everything else was secondary for that. Like they offered the most money by far, and that's what he took. So that's what it came down to.
They offered him the most money. They offered him a much bigger role than the Celtics could have offered him. Whether or not they're using him similarly or not, I guarantee you that was a huge part of it, was the role. And, you know, Michael Jordan selling you on your role in the organization is probably something that's pretty difficult to turn down. And again,
the cheese shops.
Charlotte's got so much cheese.
Absolutely. And then
he got some of that cheddar. That's all he needed.
I think a fresh start was probably something that Hayward really was looking for. I think his Boston career was probably one that he'd like to move on from for a number of reasons. You know, health. I think he felt disrespected, not just from the fans, but maybe from you know, people within the team. Maybe he felt like, you know, his role was just, like you guys said, he's kind of a bit of
Mr. Education Reform.
Mr. Education Reform might have felt a little out of place.
Is that what you get at?
Maybe he did.
He rode the Kurt Schilling train out of town.
He said something about the injury.
I'm just thinking about the first day. Hold on. I'm just thinking about the first day when they're all putting the jerseys on, and Gore's just like. Everyone's posing, and Hayward's like, I'll see you guys later.
Right. He thought it was the perfect choice. And he said something about the way the injury was handled too, Joe Swayer. He alluded to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
That comes into play too. It feels like, remember when he left the bubble and went to his own doctor instead of going to get treatment in Boston? That was kind of a weird thing too.
He went to Indy,
Yeah, so all that stuff came together, and again, I think we can all agree, even if they offered $120 million, he was probably never coming back to Boston. So it's all water under the bridge, and we can talk about Turner or the TPE or Fournier and all this stuff, but we all agree they probably should have brought him back, and we also all agree, I think, that there was no chance he was coming back under any circumstance. That makes it a little easy.
Maybe. I don't know.
Offered him $120 million.
I don't know.
You don't think he would have? I don't know.
I think Robin made the decision.
From a cap perspective, in terms of having the assets and having this here versus the little dance that they've had to do here, yeah, you would have gone into the tax. It would have been expensive, but having Gordon here would have just been one box you didn't have to worry about anymore. You would have just been checked at that position. You knew going forward you'd have a solid core, and you didn't have to worry about it.
You don't have to trade any picks, so you can just keep picking young guys and try that.
Keep picking young guys, see if you hit a lottery thing, or you could potentially package and try to sell off Kemba and see if you can get out from under that contract because you knew you'd had kind of more in the fold. Now you can't because you really need to hold on to it because you're just not deep enough. I did want to talk about Kemba. This was another game where
is there a Bruins home game tomorrow, Bobby? Are they ripping up the court and putting there's a lot of work going on back there.
Yeah, they're doing that. Yeah,
you can hear the ka-chunk.
Yeah, exactly right. That's
John, speaking of Nick says check your phone. I don't know. He's like being Nick about it. So
is he serious about the Marcus Smart thing?
He said, Bobby, check your phone too. I don't know. I said in the middle of the show. He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, we're doing a show.
Yo, why don't you tell him to check Joe's phone?
Yeah. So Nick, I did it. I told him. Now you can lay off me now.
I know. Nick doesn't.
Hold on a second.
Let's all text him right now.
No.
Whoa.
Nope.
It's pretty interesting.
I'm sure.
It's really interesting.
Are you propping it up? Oh, he's smiling.
Yes.
That's not Xanax smiling.
Right.
This is good content right here.
Cup it up, baby.
I will. So anyway, here we go.
So it was worth me telling you to check your phone then.
It is.
Yes.
Kemba, rough game. Not rough.
Writes, Nick knows how to text.
had some moments to get. Kemba, another rough night from 3. 2 of 9 3-point field goals. I think somebody sent me that his last. I want to pull up the game log. He's had a shooting night kind of like this. Like 3 out of the last 4 games where he's it might have been the exact 2 of 9 here. So again, we gave
here comes the Kemba slander.
We mentioned we mentioned the 8 field goals last time I just asked you guys, does it worry you seeing that? And then he had another night tonight where all he did was jack threes, missed a ton of them.
Bobby, you were there.
Yeah. So Bobby, what do you think? You're there.
Yeah,
how did he look to you? You're at the game.
He got out of the flow of things early, and then they started going back to that Tatum ball time at the end of this game. So it does bring back some of the concerns about the offense that you only get one shot throughout the flow of the game to make your statement, whether it's going to be facilitating or scoring the ball on the ball before they're going to move on to other options. Pretty early, they started funneling opportunity toward Jaylen Brown, and then that second half, it was all about Tatum on the ball. That whole third quarter was him just being dominant. I think he hit all 5 shots. So he struggled early, and they got away from him. That's what it was all about. Now, he did have a bunch of assists.
Last 5 games, and he did, because you're right. I mean, 8 assists last game, 6 this game, and you like to see that from him. Last 5 games from 3, 3 of 10 versus Milwaukee, 2 of 9 New Orleans, 2 of 9 Dallas, 3 of 6 versus Houston, and then 2 of 9 again. So he's in a bit of a rut here.
Shooting slump.
Yep.
Well, I think he's gonna have to adjust though, because he's playing off the ball a lot more now, right? Marcus Smart's been the point guard, especially since the injuries when Marcus came back. I mean, we had a couple of games where obviously we talked about the bad side of Marcus's game, but there's been a lot of good things to say about the way he's been handling the ball, and I think he's trying to kind of ramp up Kemba in that way. That way, Kemba doesn't always have to have the ball in his hand, and he can sort of work on just purely scoring as opposed to bringing the ball up and trying to get the team into his offense. So I think he's sort of transitioning into that, but I don't want, and we talked about this before, and even last season, I don't want Kemba to come into a space where he's thinking that he has to knock down 3-pointers to be effective, because when he's attacking, when he's dancing, like I like to say, when he's dancing and weaving through defenders the last couple of games, I've noticed, I just think that he's much more effective.
Joe Sway's gone, but Joe Sway's right though. The thing is though, if Kemba Walker doesn't have the ball in his hands, then he can't be that typical aggressive Kemba Walker driving in the hoop. Now he's the guy coming around screens or whatever it is, taking threes, but he might just be going through a bit of a shooting slump right now. Joe Sway, you got it.
Go ahead, Jimmy. My bad.
No, I just picked up I finished your sentence because we lost you mid-sentence.
So what should his role be in the offense, guys? Because there are nights where he's dynamic enough on the ball that he can create for himself and others. And I do think he's their best pick-and-roll passer by far. My question is, if he gets out of it early, like would he start 2 of 8 in that first half and they get away from him off the ball? Like I think he had a nice cutting layup in that second half, but that was about it. And we're still seeing with him that, they can get him catch and shoot opportunities from 3 occasionally, but he's just not dynamic enough off the ball that he's going to be making a big impact.
But that's been Kemba before. That was Kemba last year. How many times we see Kemba go 2 for 7 in the first half and then drop 20 in the third quarter? I mean, obviously this was like pre-injury Kemba. This is like the very first couple of months of his tenure in Boston Kemba. But I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility that he can't return to being that guy down the stretch. I'm just worried that he's going to get himself out of the game mentally if he misses 3 straight 3-pointers, or if he thinks that he doesn't, or he doesn't.
You think it's a mental thing?
I think it's a mental thing. When Kemba gets in his head a bit, when he feels like he's stepping on people's toes, I don't like that. I like him to be aggressive. I want him to not worry about that, because he's the veteran. He's the one that, at the end of the day, whether it's Jaylen or Tatum, if one of those guys is having a cold shooting night, Kemba's very more than capable.
So you think he should keep
becoming that second half Kemba?
You think he should keep firing away?
I think he should keep I think he should be careful with his shot selection, not firing from 3, but picking other spots to attack. You know,
I like him. I like him more attack mode too.
9 out of what? 12 attempts where you all threes. That's too much.
I like attack mode.
I like him in attack mode. And now that you have Fournier, you kind of almost would rather have Fournier taking these threes, right? So I mean, if you could, right. I don't think you just get away from a guy like Kemba Walker. He's too much a part of the team, too much a part of the offense. You know, whether or not he's the one ultimately taking the shot in the end is, you know, whatever. But you're not just going to get away from him. I mean, there are going to be nights where he's not the focal point of the offense, clearly.
Yeah. They can't get away from him.
I feel like some clever guy on this show, I can't remember who, suggested maybe using him coming off the bench.
But again, we talked about it. It's not going to solve that much.
You think this is rec league where he comes in with 4 other players and plays for 6 minutes, and they sub in the other 5 guys.
Luke, Mo, and who else? Romeo are going to come in.
Romeo!
He would have done great in garbage time in the fourth quarter.
Chill out with the joke about Luke. I like Luke.
They should have let him play the fourth.
It'll still involve Tatum on his second rotation coming in at the end of the first, so you'll have a couple of them out there.
But who's got the ball in their hands? It's going to be Tatum
and or Jaylen coming in later. He's going to mix and match with starters there too. It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous.
They're in a tough spot now, John, and you've pressed this over and over again. Like, get out from them if you can. Get out if you can. I just think it's so tough because if they trade him, they'll get so little back that even like the marginal production that he's occasionally putting out there is still better than, you know, let's say Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley, for example. But on the other end of things, you have a point, John. Like, his fit now that Brown and Tatum have surpassed them as on-ball players is super tough on this team. Like, if we go back and watch November 2019, the style he was playing, it was tons and tons of ball time. Point guard, undisputed. Tatum and Brown had a feed off him, his attacking. I don't think they can get back to that just because of how far Tatum and Brown have come. So, like, is there a middle ground that they can find?
So that's the problem is, and again, it's right. He either has to completely redefine himself or like, that's the thing. So this is why I keep coming back to it. I'm not like, oh, I'm a genius. I solved it. I should put him on the bench. Like, duh. Anybody can theorize, try this, try that. The only reason I put it out there is because he either has to completely change, because what happens? You play, he's right now trying to find the moment of the game where the game needs him, you know, because he's trying to be deferential and not just go into Kemba mode where dribble, try to get into the paint, get off that little jumper.
So you think it's a mentality thing too?
So either he changes the mentality completely and redefines himself as a player, or you change his role. And that's why I think the second one is easier, because I'd say send him over there and just say, be you, man. Go. Take the ball, jack it up as much as you want. The second unit offense is yours to do with as you choose. I think that's a more likely transition than it would be for him to say, can you totally reinvent yourself and become Ray Allen and just run around off ball screens and wait for somebody to hit you with it and, you know, catch and shoot? Like, I don't think that's going to happen with him.
No, it's not. And that's what everyone wanted, you know, in the first half of the year. Everyone's blaming Kemba Walker because he's not a pass first point guard that can just give the ball to Tatum and Brown. You know, it's like you can't take Kemba Walker and take everything that he's good at and tell him to do the opposite. So, yeah, I mean, again, you're trying to fit up.
You got to work with him.
Right, but you're trying to fit a lot of pieces together that don't perfectly fit. And this team has, you know, over the last few years, Danny Ainge has had to get creative with guys coming in and coming out and leaving the team and trades and everything. So, of course, it's not going to be a seamless, you know, fit everywhere. But I think Kemba Walker is a talented enough player where he can adapt to the game and give it what it needs at times. And again, the last 2 games, maybe that's aside from the bricks from 3. I think he is giving the game, you know, what it needs. I mean, no one was more like positively vocal about bringing on Fournier than I felt Kemba Walker was. It felt like he was extremely happy to get Fournier on this team. So I have a feeling that he's willing to, you know, bend a little bit on some of the things that he does out there in order to get a guy like Fournier involved more. Maybe that's what's happening.
That's true too. Yeah. And you almost wonder, like, who should have the more shots, more opportunity of those two. Like, it becomes an even bigger lump of ball guys now because that's where Fournier is at his best, and we're seeing it now. They're getting him more involved, getting him those spot-up jumpers, and not only is there one ball to go around, but there's only so many times that they can run these guys around screens and get them those threes. They can't give that play to Brown 5 times and Tatum 5. Like that can't be their entire playbook for the game, and they just take turns doing it. You know what I mean? So like you have a lot of guys on this roster who want to do similar things, and somebody's going to have to sacrifice a little bit and diversify their game. And let's give credit to Fournier too. I wasn't sure he could play the style of ball that he's mostly been playing so far, catch and shoot, off-ball movement, catch in the lane and finish, and he's doing that. He's putting his mind to that, and he might be the differential guy who ultimately takes the backseat to even get Kemba more involved. So luckily he's succeeding in that role right now. We'll see if it continues, but there's another question there. Does he like that? Is that something that will spur him to re-sign with this team? It's a very complicated situation at the top of this roster when it comes to opportunity. And we saw how that worked out with Hayward. That was a big thing that seemingly pushed him outside the door. And they don't want to lose Fournier. Like, that would be an absolute disaster, as we've talked about.
Yeah, no question. I mean, that's the part that everyone was worried about when the trade went down. Yeah, this is great. It's a great piece, but if you don't re-sign him, that's another hole that's you have to worry about again, 2 months down the road. But yeah, I thought that was interesting too, Bobby. He talked about they used to get into a lot of battles when he played for the Hornets, going up against the Orlando Magic. And, it's one of those, it sounds like one of those players where it's like you can't stand him, but you would love to have him on your team. So I think that's the situation there with Kemba. But how much does Brad Stevens play in this, though? Does he play a part of this? Is he telling Kemba, look, I don't care if you miss 4 in a row, keep taking those threes because they're going to drop?
Everyone
maybe that's part of it.
Yeah. Everyone gets to shoot whenever they want, Josue. That's the rule. Those are the rules.
Well, that much is obvious, John. That much is that's very obvious. But I just with Kemba again, when he's attacking, it's just good things happen when he's doing that. When he's able to get to the rim.
And you said this, Josue. Not only do Brown and Tatum have to have the heart-to-heart, they might have to loop Kemba into that one and have a group conversation about. If
not, he should be the moderator. Kemba should be the moderating. But happen. It hasn't happened.
Everybody
watch Evan called meeting. Evan, listen, guys. I know a thing or two about losing a lot. Let's change things around this place. Come on, you guys with me?
Isn't that so? Evan and the Magic get such a bad rap as like being the worst team ever in the league forever. And meanwhile, they made 2 straight playoff runs before this year when they had a ton of injuries.
But they personified what I call the
mediocrity.
NBA purgatory, where like you're right there, you could make the playoffs, but you're not at the dead bottom to get the number 1 pick, but you're not going to get top 10. Like they've always been in that spot for like the last 4 or 5 years.
Where the Hornets were too. So
right.
I don't know what John says. Go to the bench. I don't think that's the solution here. I think this is another situation with this team where everybody has to look themselves in the mirror. Brad, Danny has certainly assessed the situation. Tatum and Brown, they all have to come together and figure out the best solution to this verbally. Because right now it is just a free-for-all. Like, let's see who can get theirs wherever they want. And nobody is being strengthened by this except maybe Fournier right now, just because he can fit in around all this a little better. Brown, too. Like, we got to pull Jaylen Brown into this. It still feels like he's out of the picture far too often. Like tonight, lighting it up early, 3 straight threes. They're funneling him opportunity off the ball, and then he just gets lost a little bit in that second half, and that can't happen come playoff time. Brown has to be number 2 definitively every single night come playoff time.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, when it's a 25-point game, I mean, they did this the old-fashioned blowout style, right? I mean, we haven't seen this in a really long time. So
Tatum came out there and hit 5 straight shots, doing his dancing isolation thing. It wasn't a formula for success by any means.
Right.
What do you think, Jimmy?
I'm done with this game. That's what I think.
That Marcus Smart thing.
Yeah. Anyway, so
I'm on to Philly.
Huh?
I
did want to ask you guys one. I want to ask you guys one more question. Okay. Somewhat related to this game. This is something that continues to come up in the chat, and you see it in Twitter all the time. And it's obviously hindsight with these sorts of things is 2020. But when you see it tonight, and we're having the Kemba discussion, and then you see Rozier, and we were talking about it on the thread.
He's calling.
You asked this question. I don't think anybody alive thought that this was a play that they were going to make that offseason when Kyrie left. Rozier was a goner. And in fact, I think the only thing you can question in a hindsight move is whether Danny should have dealt Rozier mid-season at the deadline to be able to get something back for him. And I think the answer to that is unequivocally, absolutely yes. I think that was a big misstep. But seeing as what, knowing what we know now, would you have taken Terry for the money Charlotte gave him, which again was considered a massive overpay? Everyone was like, Charlotte,
they give him
this for what?
Same
Versus
as Kemba, right?
Who at the time, everybody, myself included, was very excited about Kemba as a really good addition and a nice stopgap after losing Kyrie, where you felt you might not lose that much. So at the time, I don't think anybody would have said it, but now looking back, if you had it all to do over again, would they have been better off with Rozier and his money versus what they have with Kemba right now?
So with his money is the key word. Obviously with his money, yes, because the big knock on Kemba is, or not it's not even really, it's not Kemba's fault. It's the Celtics cap situation is where it is right now. And obviously the less money you have tied to these guys, the less harder it's going to be to get out of it in an off season if you're trying to, trade players or anything like that. So based on the money, yes. Here's what I'll say though about Terry Rozier. Great player, best fourth quarter guard of the year, really, based on the numbers that we're seeing. But I'm not sure, we talk about fit, I'm not sure he fits any better than Kemba Walker does he? What is going on?
Who's listening to something right now?
Somebody is listening to something. I think it's Josue. Now he's on mute. Okay.
All right.
Let me finish my thought.
Sorry about that, fellas. I'm trying to get this thing from Max right now. Max, give me the scoop right now. Give me 1 second.
I know it too, and I'm trying to get it also. So Nick's trying to get it for us.
Why am I out of the loop here?
I'll tell you about it in a little bit.
All right, let me just finish my freaking thought, okay? Even though nobody even cares anymore. Josue's muted, doesn't even know
What's the point of this show?
What is the point of this show? All right, listen. This is what I say about Rozier. Fit-wise with this Celtics team, I'm not sure he's any better than Kemba is. And I don't think he's anywhere near. I don't think he's anywhere near the type of a leader and like sort of. And this isn't really a knock at Rozier. It's just that I just think the Celtics with Kemba, with Brown, and with Tatum needed maybe an older guy, somebody that could sort of allow them to do their thing. I don't think Rozier had any intention of handing the reins over to a guy like Brown or a guy like Tatum, and he's proven that, he can be a star in his own right. So he's not necessarily wrong for that. I just think you have three butting heads in Rozier, Brown, and Tatum, all vying for, you talk about you shoot, I shoot. I think you get a lot of that with a guy like Rozier here. And I think that's, honestly, I think him and Kyrie were button heads. I think they were really the two that, were button heads when you talk about the chemistry being off. So yeah, I think the Celtics made the right decision. But that being said, I love Rozier. I mean, Scary Terry, he's fun to watch. I just don't think that you'd have
great personality.
You'd have to, if you were going to keep Rozier, you almost might have to think about trading like Brown, because I just don't think they all would be able to fit together.
That whole era from like 2016 through 2020 that ultimately was, so much of it gets blamed on Kyrie. But you do have to look back on some of the other characters that were involved, like Terry Rozier. And I know he just got a standing ovation during pregame tonight, and they were going nuts when he was swapping jerseys with Rob Williams after the game. And they love him. He had that moment against Milwaukee and even in that Philly series to some degree where he was just a brilliant, aggressive guard for this team. When Smart was down, when Kyrie was down in that postseason, he stepped up in a massive way. And I'll say this too, he gets the blame for that Game 7 against Cleveland, even though he was phenomenal in the Game 6 at Cleveland where they could have clinched the series.
He's dunking that game. They all did, but he was completely off in that game.
But the next year, where he had to go back to being that third guard, it was just clear that he wasn't comfortable with it and made it known. Day after the season, he goes on First Take and starts talking about us not running the plays and not doing things right and this and that. There were just murmurings all around the team of his, dissatisfaction with his role. And I thought during that year that Ainge could have solved a lot of problems by trading him. And I still believe that to this day. That could have salvaged that team to some degree. whether it would have worked out long term to do that, whether they would have even got anything. I just think he was so unhappy on that team that he needed to go. And ultimately, that was a big reason he ended up going to Charlotte. They got Kemba out of the deal. And I just think that's where everyone ultimately wanted to end up. Kemba wanted to be in Boston. Rozier wanted his own team. And that was the history. And so even if Rozier wanted to stay and that would have been a good fit, I still say keep Kemba because I believe the 2020 Celtics had a chance to win a championship. And that was with Kemba, Brown, Tatum, and Hayward. That team, when they were healthy, were so dominant that year.
I don't think they beat the Lakers, but they should have gone there. They should have gone.
And so I think that run was worth Kemba, even if the rest of the contract doesn't go amazingly. And do you think Rozier could have, at point guard, done the same thing with that team?
I mean, it's impossible to say. I think he's certainly talented. He's certainly talented enough. But I think it goes back to, do these guys will they play well together, right? I mean, we're already seeing that issue to an extent right now. And I just think tossing in a guy like Rozier, who, like you said, Bobby, clearly was dissatisfied with his role, clearly thought he was just as good as these other guys that were playing in front of him. And credit to him, he's gone on to the Hornets and he's showed that he is, a star in this league and one of the better, clutch. He's playing like one of the best clutch point guards in the NBA this season. So, again, I mean, is he a type of guy who's going to take a backseat to Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum? Absolutely not. So, I just don't think it would have worked here. Now, money-wise, sure, you're paying him less, and he allows you to get out from underneath the contract easier. And I mean, he's an extremely tradable guy if you needed to, if he was putting this type of production up. Unlike Kemba Walker, who many feel like, including John, feels like isn't tradable at all.
No, yeah, and the case for him would be you can go long term with him, with Brown, with Tatum, and kind of build something there with a core, rather than Kemba being a bit more of a short term fix that isn't in line with those guys' ages.
Right.
I just think at that time it was a no-brainer too, Jimmy. I mean, you bring in a veteran, a perennial all-star. Besides the fact that Rozier obviously has shown that he can come up big in the postseason, I just don't think he has pains to do. I mean, from the Celtics perspective at least, right? I mean, if you're looking from the way things ended after 2019 season, it's like, wait, let's try to get one. Let's try to split this up as much as we can without breaking, the best core guys that we have. And of course, that was Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, and then they traded for an all-star in Kemba Walker. So I just think at that time it was just too much of a no-brainer to just say, you know what, let's just give the young guy a shot here. I just think they would have been. It's too risky. It was too risky of a move.
It was 1,000% an obvious move to let Rozier leave and to bring Kemba on. And again, I don't think you can debate that.
Yeah, how can you say no? How can you say no to an all-star that really wants to come to your team?
There was at that point, if you polled 1,000 people, it would have been 999 who would have said, "Absolutely, are you kidding? Of course it's Kemba." I'm literally saying, looking back at it now, it's not.
No, I get what you're saying.
It's people's jobs to make these determinations about who the long-term fit is and whether this guy's knees are going to hold up or how that style of play. But what Jimmy said right out of the gate, I think, is the number one point here, which is everyone will see the stats, see Rozier playing. His efficiency is way up this year over what it's been, and that's kind of the difference. He's knocking down more threes. He's shooting at a higher clip. I mean, people have to remember his final season with the Celtics, my God, was he
disaster.
Bad.
Oh, even in the playoffs,
bad as it gets, both in terms of refusal to accept his role, but also just his percentages across the board were so bad. He had such a bad year after that amazing stint in the playoffs there. So it was really depressing to see it. I mean, he shot 38% from the floor. I mean, he was and he was just a chucker. And honestly, he was never a good shooter. He still
isn't he 41 now?
No, he's 47% this year, which is crazy.
Really?
He had never eclipsed 40%.
He never eclipsed 40,
ever. Okay. But the threes were okay. 38%, 35% his last 2 years, they were passable. But I mean, he'd never eclipsed 38%. 40% shooting.
That was a big indicator too. If you're the Celtics, that's like a red flag,
Yeah.
The Celtics have been so fortunate with these scoring point guards. It's just like, well, wait a minute, this guy's not even in the 40%. No, absolutely not. Like you went from Isaiah's MVP candidate season to Kyrie Irving, what he does with that basketball on a string and tearing it up, and then you go to Rozier, not putting up 40, not being able to sustain a 40% shoot percentage. Like, that's like, wait a minute. Brad's like, I can't have this. I can't deal with this as my starting point guard. He's been spoiled a bit in a good way.
Right.
They've been good that basketball God's been good to them in that point guard spot.
Score first point guard who isn't really able to score at a high enough clip to justify his existence. I think it's an automatic. So I'm going to tell you guys what we were talking about here. So word had come to us, and Josue has it here. And again, I'm not saying this to draw credit. I just want to put it out there because it's out there. So Marcus apparently was on.
Let's see how many y'all backpedal. Go ahead.
Huh?
No, I want to see how many you guys backpedal.
No, not one bit. What I will say is I will defend one person in this thing, but Marcus Smart actually calls out the Garden Report by name in a post-game interview with Max, talking about his on-the-ball defense. It's been brought up on this show before that Marcus he's not regularly assigned the other team's really quick, jittery, two-guard, top scorer sort of person, and we've talked about whether or not Marcus is that kind of guy. I don't think he's been that kind of guy for a couple of years, despite the fact that he's Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's much better guarding bigger physical guys who are out of position. We saw the job he did on Zion the other day. He still draws tough assignments, but whether or not he's able to stay in front of really quick, jittery, score first guards, I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if it's really ever been the case, truthfully. But that came to his attention in some way, and he flat out said, and I think he attributed it to Sherrod. Well, I don't think Sherrod has said that, but Sherrod might have been part of a conversation about that that's BS.
I thought he was the one that said the shift to your guards, though, if I'm not mistaken. I remember responding directly to Sherrod. Sherrod said, with the shift to your guards, I'm not quite sure he can stay up with them. So I agree with that. I agree with that, but the
I've said that a lot, so I'm going to eat it. I've said it a bunch before Sherrod started coming on the show. That's true. It's possible Sherrod said it himself, but I don't remember.
John, you've been saying that since last year. That's true.
Is there a quote or something, or
I don't know. I don't know where he got it. But
Jimmy's all scared. Look at Jimmy.
No, I feel like I'm out of the loop. I don't know.
You went in on Marcus, bro. You went in on.
No, he's asking, do you have sound or a quote from Smart?
The bad news is he watches the Garden Report, so watch what you say, Jimmy.
No, I just didn't know if we had sound on it.
You're gonna love Marcus now.
No, my opinions won't change. I mean, we've talked about Marcus a million times. I think he's great at what he does, and listen, what we say won't determine what Marcus Smart's role or career arch is here in Boston. So
no, he plays better, man.
Yeah,
we might get credit for this.
Friday night was his best defensive game of the year. Remember,
best defensive game. What did Marcus do? He played phenomenal defense and he didn't shoot a lot. If we're gonna eat that one, and that's the Marcus Smart you get the rest of the year, we'll eat it.
What about what I was talking about when we started the show? The fact that he's been taking over the point guard duties and doing a damn good job at it. I mean, like. For the things that he does bad, it's just like I feel like most Celtics fans, not just you, John, a lot of Celtics fans, they just completely forget all the other stuff. And it's just like, well, wait a minute. Because the team isn't 500, okay, yeah, I can understand your frustration, but who's the bigger scapegoat than Marcus Smart? Since last year, everything falls on Marcus. He just comes back, and then they drop a couple games. Oh, Marcus is doing that shooting thing again. It's just like, well, wait a minute. That's part of the problem, but it's not the whole issue here. That's not like get him out of town issue, right? It's not that serious. It's not that deep.
Our comments were pretty glaring about him too because of his notoriety as a phenomenal defender. But we've talked about Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown as well, who while they haven't honed their reputations in on being all-world defenders, were crucial defenders on this being a top 5 defense last year, and they have slipped as well. So you can say Smart, Brown, and Tatum, all 3 of them have slipped because of the bigger offensive load that they've taken on. That usually happens in the NBA. Right. It's just a natural thing. Kawhi Leonard, if you look at Kawhi Leonard these last 2 years, he has not been a very good defender, and he's known as the best defender in the universe.
You see that. You see it based off of assignment choices. The last time they played Kawhi, he's not guarding Tatum.
Yeah. No, and that's and that's, it's all this blame we're placing on everybody's a little imperfect because should Smart be the third option on the team like he has been for most of this year? Probably not. He should be on the bench and fixating on defense. But because of the roster that Danny Ainge put in place, that's the role that he had to take on. So, it's not us just drilling Smart saying he's being lazy or, he's not even physically the defender he's in the past. We know he's capable of it. But on this team, in this current role, a fact is a fact. He just hasn't been the same defender this year.
No. Fine.
Yeah,
fact.
fine. I mean, listen.
That's fact.
Yeah, but it's not
every
get him out
player.
of town type of level, though.
We're not. But
He's a polarizing player. Look,
no, I know,
he's always been a
but
polarizing player, Josue, because his value supposedly transcends the numbers or what you see, or it's based on intangibles. Right. And that's where always, no matter what, that argument's going to go, because you're going to see its stat lines, you're going to see shooting percentages, you're going to see those games where he's, jacking tons of threes, games where he has lapses, he has a 3-point friggin' heave the other day and then breaks down, the next 3 plays after that, and the Celtics kind of fought, go in the tank against New Orleans. There's a lot of there. He's a polarizing figure because of, look, I mean, we're not talking about, people forget about Marcus Smart a lot of times, like the waves they've ridden with him as an organization over the years. I mean, there was times where the question was, can you keep this guy around anymore? And obviously he's righted that ship, and he's kind of taken on the role of like the spiritual, and emotional leader on the team. But I mean, this guy's been all over the map with it. And then you throw in inconsistencies and inefficiencies. He's a lightning rod. He's always been, he always will be, till years after he's gone. That's not going to change.
Yeah, but okay, let me ask you this, John. How many times have you mentioned that he's all NBA defense? How many times have you ever on this show mentioned it?
I've mentioned it to talk about whether or not it's legit. Yeah.
No, not even. You didn't even mention it. You just talk about he's regarded as his defensive god, but never once do you mention his biggest accolade. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's where I'm getting at, John. Like it's just like people. It's easy to forget because you're so to speak, in your feelings about this team. What's wrong with this? What's wrong? Oh yeah, Marcus again. And so yeah, that's on the list, but it's a long list of things that's with this team.
But that's
and Smart was out forever too. Let's not forget that he was out for like over 20 games.
No one talks about that.
No, but listen, the issue that people have with Smart is not. Listen, his defense isn't the issue. You can say that maybe it hasn't been up to par with what we've seen in the past, and maybe he doesn't make All NBA defense this year. I don't know, but the issue is when the shots start to go up in numbers and they're not falling, and sometimes he might make a pass that maybe he shouldn't have made, a little, extra, boneheaded play, something like that. That's what frustrates people. It's not people getting mad at him because of his defense.
Nobody.
It's people saying, why is he taking 16 shots? That's when people get upset with him.
Yeah, but then it's like when you're in the middle of an argument and it's like, and you know what? On top of everything, you're not even that good at defense. You know what I mean? Like that's been the narrative. That's what people say now.
You got to stick with the facts on it. What we're saying is he the guy who is locking down another like dynamic scoring guard game after game? You give him that assignment and he chases that guy around all game.
I get what you're saying.
How many 40-point games from from scorers are we? Did the Celtics eat this year? You're literally pointing out that you can still be good at defense and not necessarily be that. And literally, if that's the criticism, which is Marcus Smart is a terrific team defender. He can guard lots of different positions, so his defensive versatility is a huge asset. But the one knock on him defensively, where I think he gets more credit than he necessarily deserves, is he's not locking down the other team's best player on a night-in, night-out basis. And you've had a lot of guys go for 40 against the Celtics team. So if you have a guy, and we've said that about Jaylen too, if these guys are supposed to be real defensive stoppers, you shouldn't be eating as many of those games. And I understand it's team defense. That's the criticism. Nobody's saying he's not a great defender. Of course he is. He does a million different things defensively. We're literally talking about one aspect of his game on the defensive side.
That's the other side of it too. It's not going to be one guy who's shutting down another player in this defense.
It's a team thing.
That's just not how it works. And that's how Avery Bradley started to slip on the end a little bit too, because he was trying to make up for Isaiah, and there was a lot of switching and a lot of handoffs and stuff. So again, this defensive meltdown, it's not about Smart. It's about Tice early on this year, and Thompson certainly, who wasn't doing a good job, and Tatum and Brown. Like, everybody's been involved in this. Grant's been a disaster. Like, it's just a whole team failure on the defensive end. And I think that's probably why Smart gets frustrated with this, because he knows that. And when you start pointing out individuals within this, it can get a little bit touchy. I mean, we can talk about Kemba too. Like, at the end of the day, he's just not a great defender because of his size, and it is what it is. They attacked him early in this one,
hard,
and he got hammered. Yeah. So you can give him credit for his positioning and all that, because again, this team plays team defense. It's switching, it's handoffs, it's all that stuff. No one
They're not. Really, it's all switching anyway, so it doesn't really matter who you're starting on and this and that. This is a small. Again, this is a nitpicky.
If the Celtics played like tear through the screens and like stay with your man and, had Smart face guarding Jamal Murray or whoever it is in games, you might see a different result for Smart. He might actually be capable of locking down in that way, but it's tough in today's league. Like the league, even since like Marcus Smart came in the league has changed so much. We talk about that all the time, and you have to like sacrifice a little bit now in the individual pieces because teams can just so easily get Smart off of Murray or whoever else, I don't know who would be in this game, Rozier, and get Rozier onto Kemba. Like they can do that at will. And so that's where it gets tough for great guards like Smart who want to D up a guy one-on-one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Smart's an emotional guy, so he's going to, if he, if you could, it's like anybody else in the world. You say 100 great things about them and then one bad thing. They're only going to think about the one bad thing. So
but we say Smart gets a lot of criticism. From
I know, but just fans and media,
general,
though,
He's like I said, he's a lightning rod type of guy.
His shooting's a big one.
Smart is the least. Like I said, is of all of the things, as Josue said, that people pick on with Smart, whether it's this show, this chat, general media, fans on Twitter, it's not this aspect of his game. This is something that we mentioned that I don't know that he necessarily is the guy who locks down, players or is playing at the best level one-on-one defensively. That's the least criticism. Most of the stuff with Smart is the shot selection and the other thing. So yes, he definitely gets criticized for stuff. This is such a small sliver of it. And it doesn't detract from his overall defensive presence on the court. So
but again,
it's a strange thing for him to get, of all the things to get nitpicky about or for him to get upset about from the criticism. I think we saw him earlier in the year. He got really testy on the shot thing, right? How many times were people asking him about it? And he's like, I'm a shooter. I'm going to friggin' shoot.
Yeah.
Look, you have a guy like Smart. That's what he believes you can't be successful unless you have some type of ego, right?
Now let's defend it.
He feeds off it,
Let's defend this a little bit too, though, because this team factually has not been a good defense this year. It's the same team, it's the same personnel, and they went from 5 to within the last month like 24th. So what is it? Is it effort? Is it engagement? Is it individuals within it? We have to consider all of this because no one on this team is going to call out individuals and they're all going to say it's a team. So you got to go down the list and start approaching everybody's role in it all, especially the best defenders who have been held to that standard over time. Like
Jaylen's gotten it too, right? And Tatum, you've mentioned it. It's across the board. Yeah. It's across the board.
I just think
100%.
I think what led into that conversation, or at least how it got so heated or whatever it was, but it was this before the deadline or right after? Either way, it was about
Gordon.
Could the Celtics have exactly the Gordon? Do you make a deal? Is Marcus Smart according to Mark Murphy? Was he the deal breaker? Is he the reason why Aaron Gordon is not in the Celtics right now?
Right.
And that's what led to this whole conversation, and I think that's what we forget.
And we have reports too.
It wasn't a conversation about Marcus. What is it? Marcus isn't that good of a defender anymore. It's more of how valuable is Marcus on the Celtics compared to other teams. I think that's how the whole thing started.
Various people have reported too that Smart heard his name in rumors and did not like it. And there was word of a sit down with Ainge where Ainge said, you were never on the table. Yep. So again, this is a very frustrating time for him because it felt like he was on the verge of heading out of town.
That's what I mean. The thing with Marcus Smart getting upset about a comment about, specifically whether or not he's a, terrific on the ball defender or able to guard quick mobile guards I think is really more of a reaction to his name coming up makes you have a debate on whether or not Marcus Smart should still be here. And when that comes up, it's a full autopsy, it's an audit. Everyone spends all the time talking about what you do and don't do and whether it's worth you being traded or not. And the people who want to make the trade are going to point out all of your warts. And that's why people hate having their names come up in trade discussions, because then everyone sits here and says, I'm all set with it. If consensus, and we saw it building both in you saw Twitter polls in our chats, people were ready to go. Yep. Let's move on from this guy, even though people love him and they think he's a heart and soul player and they think he's a one-of-a-kind guy. It seemed
and that wasn't right. Yeah,
it seemed like the vibe was, it's about time to move on here. And when you start to hear that stuff, that sucks.
Well, it was more like, if it happens, if it happens, it happens. I think people were resigned to the fact that it could have happened, and
and people probably should have labored over it a little more. I think people get caught up in that deadline flurry. They want to see action. They want to see players flipping here and there. And you don't even get into the fact that you can make a trade and make yourself worse. And I labored over that one for days and days. I still haven't even decided over it. Because, again, what's Gordon? We can pick Gordon's game apart for days and days.
It was anybody's game apart.
Yeah, It wasn't a no-brainer at all. And again, I think we were all in a similar place on that one. Like, it might be a good idea just given where Smart is, but man, you could rip Smart out of this room and just watch the house fall.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And that was my main point. I'm like, okay, maybe he's not locking down the Kyrie Irvings of the world or whatever, this year, but it's the culture. He's the anchor of the defense, and it's a culture that starts and ends with him. It's not sure they struggled a bit when he wasn't there. Sure. Yeah, they did win some games as well, but I just think all of that, again, that value is not the same on another team. It's exclusively for the Celtics, and hence why he has the team-friendly deal. It all lines up.
Bad team defense, bad all year with him here. Bad when he was gone. It's just not been good.
There's other stuff too, though. I mean, we think about his fiery personality, his ability to call guys out. He's going to be the guy who freaks out in the room. I don't think anyone else in that room is going to do that. We talk about Brad, that not being Brad's role. So if you pull him out of that and you bring in another guy in Gordon, that's another intangible loss for the team.
Again, what have we talked about? Where you lose with Smart if you made this trade? It's you don't have another playmaker right now, and right now you have to have him out there distributing because nobody else is doing it.
Especially with Kemba's condition.
So you have to. And two, that kind of motivator guy. What are the two knocks on the team right now? Nobody's getting them the ball, and so they need a little kick in the ass because they come out with low energy. That's Smart's job. So when you're talking about trading him, you're giving up two things that you desperately need in the moment, which is what made the Gordon conversation a difficult conversation, which is, Gordon seemingly has the type of skill set and a player that you're looking for, but they don't have anybody who can simulate what Smart does for the team. And if you remove it, you're losing. How much are you losing? It could be a ton. Or it could. You might not really notice it, and then you move on, and that's that. Right. But that's the debate. That's all. That's the debate.
Credit to Danny Ainge too, though. They got the player in the position they needed. They got it for very cheap, and they retained Smart and all their picks into the future, which is all you could ask for. Like, this team was begging for an upgrade. They got one. It's working out so far, and now they get to keep Smart. They get to keep these picks to use in future deals. I came out of that deadline absolutely thrilled, even though they didn't get the Gordon thing done.
I feel better about it now after watching Fournier the last couple of days. But again, you want to see it high level. It's less about the player and more about what happens next with the next year and how much you pay for them. And like I said, re-signing Smart, extending Rob, and doing Fournier. That's a lot of money you're going to have to pay just to keep this team together. I don't know how much closer it gets you to a championship. So it's less about the player. I do want to see Fournier do it against better teams. We do want to move on a little bit and talk about the Sixers because we lost Josue. We do have the Sixers coming up, and Embiid is back. So this is an interesting little 2-game stretch here for the Celtics.
Absolutely. We get Knicks and you get Sixers and the Knicks, right? Is that the 2-game stretch, I think?
Back to back. So the question is not only, I hate playing the hypothetical, like if you lose or if you get smoked by Philly. Let's bring Josue back in here.
They're going to get that win. Philly's going down.
You think so?
I think so.
So. One, there's always that kind of like.
How about a test for Rob?
It's a huge test. Embiid's back, and they were talking about it on the broadcast, and Scal brought it up, so it's interesting to me. Like, he was almost like, so I know Rob's your starter, but he's like, but are you really going to start him against Embiid? It's like, I don't know who else you're going to start against Embiid.
Thompson.
Cornette. We watched Thompson not work there either. This is where you come back to it, and you're like, who else? Like, what? Who else? Like, it's that nobody is good against Embiid. So if Rob struggles here, it's not going to be an indictment on him. Nobody's good against Embiid. So what do you expect? Right. sink or swim, right?
Well, the Bobbies of the world will use it as an indictment on Rob. They'll say, "See, he's not ready." But honestly, though, I will say this. Speaking of Embiid, and we had this debate last show. Did you see Karl Anthony Towns dunk all over Embiid? The same Karl Anthony Towns that Bobby laughed out of this discussion when Sherrod brought him up recently as a potential piece in the offseason that the Celtics could theoretically go after. Anyways, that's besides the point. But what?
Problem is, Towns follows out, and Embiid goes to the line 17 times, and Philly wins. So, Towns got his moment, but again,
Towns still had a good line. I mean, I think he dropped like 36.
Towns had a good line.
Yeah,
nobody can stay with Embiid, but Towns had a good line.
Right.
Oh, but anyways, it's the fouling. He gets to the free throw line, unlike anybody we've seen in recent history.
What are you gonna do?
That's going to be big for Rob, but at least now Brad has a couple of more players that can use up some fouls, right?
That's my fear. Is Rob's got 3 fouls in the first quarter, and that's it. You know?
Yeah.
That was my only concern really with the whole should Rob start or not. It's just like, oh, you rack up fouls, he's going to be done mentally for the rest of the game. But I think he's a much stronger. He's in a different space now. But yeah, I just think with other guys, the new players, the defense. Luke Cornett going out there. You could throw the different players at him, but it's not going to stop him. But I think they're in better shape, whereas you didn't have those bodies before.
They need Tristan.
I'm still holding out that Grant can go in and just give you solid defense, along with maybe a couple of threes. You know, it's going to be a really good game. It's a really good test for this in the way that they've been.
Is this a nickname the way they look lately? By the way,
that's a great point, Josue. This is definitely a game where Grant gets involved because we saw Boston use him against Giannis in that series last week, and it worked out well. Just him being able to hold his ground in the post. That's where Grant wants to defend, not on the perimeter chasing guys around, but holding his ground out there. The problem is Embiid can shoot over him fairly easily, but the height difference. But if you get Embiid shooting, that's what you want him doing. So if Rob,
sorry, go ahead.
I don't think this is a Cornette one. Cornette's going to get destroyed down there.
I don't mean, no, I was just going to say, I'm talking about what he does for setting screens and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I think coming off the bench, like, you need someone that can just set those hard screens. And I love what Cornette's doing. I know it's not a whole lot of playing time, but it's like he's getting familiar with the offense. And no, I'm not talking about the defensive side of things. I just like to see these new buys out there that they're being productive on both ends, but they're doing little things, whether it's just getting open inside or even he's not open. He has great hands to finish right underneath the hoop. He's setting up screens that giving up space, and that's just the whole pace and space what Brad Stevens' offense used to be, the MO. I mean, it's starting to get back to that. Wow, it's been months since we've seen that.
Man, though, if Tobias Harris is giving you 30, though, it's game over. Like 32 against Minnesota, I'm looking at. Yeah, and that's what happened in the last series too. The Celtics did what they could against Embiid, but then Simmons gets a triple-double, and Harris goes out there and scores 25, 30, and then you got Seth Curry now, who was the best three-point shooter in the league to start this game. That team's become a load offensively, and that's why they're 10 games better than the Celtics.
Jimmy, what's the answer to Embiid? Go ahead, say it. Who's got to play?
Taco. Taco is the guy that's going to come in.
With a straight face and everything.
Did you guys see Taco tonight with the looked like what's Gal say Hakeem the Dream on that one?
That
flipped it in.
Post up took first of all took 36 seconds.
Yeah,
I could hear him thinking each step at a time. Each step is okay. Left, pivot, right.
I've never seen.
What did it was like a warm-up drill.
Their nigga said this, right? Okay, right.
Yeah.
I've never seen
Taco's just going through like in his head. Okay, they
more
told me
slowly on a basketball court in my life than that.
That was tough.
It's like
that was tough.
You can't like, dude. I'm standing here. Like, I know you're going over here. Like, you're moving so slow. I'm already at your next spot. Make your next fake. Every time we go to fake somewhere else, the defender's like, "All right, I'm here now." Like, are you?
Yeah.
I'm at my parents' spot for Easter, and even my dad was just like, "That was ridiculously slow. Like, what was that?"
That was crazy.
Oh my God, that was slow.
On a serious note, though, yeah, I mean, Embiid's just a problem. He's going to be a problem. They don't have an Embiid stopper, but join the rest of the league. I mean, if Rob can stay out of if this team can stay out of foul trouble, then they'll be able to roll with them. I really hope the Celtics can compete in this game. Otherwise, it's going to feel like fool's gold the last couple of games. Because at the end of the day,
didn't Philly just destroy them in that series at the beginning of the year? It was not even close.
Yeah. No, it was not close. It wasn't close. And that's why I really hope that the Celtics can compete this time around. They should compete. I mean, this isn't, they're neither team is
they're 10 games worse in this game,
than,
Jimmy.
I know, but when you go to last season, are they really both this far off from where they were last season? I mean, you would think the Celtics could at least, again, compete in this game. We talked about it. Who was it? I forget. There was a team coming right out of the All-Star break that we wanted them to compete with, and they did.
Oh, the Bucks.
Yeah, the Bucks.
The back-to-back.
Yeah.
Well, not back-to-back nights, but back-to-back games.
No, yeah, there's a formula for success here, Jimmy. This is actually where you like Brad and love that Stevens is the coach. He has good game plans for these kind of matchups where it's so central on one player. And if other guys on Philly have bad games and they're able to really key in on Embiid, all of a sudden it becomes a more winnable game. And I'll say this about Rob. We got some film of him playing Embiid in that preseason game because he was the only guy playing. And he held his ground in there, at least physically. Now, the fakes and shots and all that stuff got tricky, but the physicality of that matchup.
He's got to stay on his feet. Yeah, at the end of the day, you got to play him honest and you just can't foul him. If Embiid gets 70 points, so be it. Rob can't come out of that game, and you can't.
Well, Rob's got 7'6" length, right? He can use all of that.
Go try to pick that shot out of the air, or just play it clean and just put your body in position and do the best you can. He starts friggin' going for everything, or going for up fakes, or trying to body. He's gonna get torn up. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge. My fear is this is a come back down to earth sort of game. You're feeling nice off of Houston and Charlotte. However, you go in there and you run with them. I mean, again, I hate saying put too much emphasis on one game, one way or the other. But I really am curious to see after a couple of games of not just tearing up another team, but seeing them play the way you want them to play, with crazy ball movement, guys taking shots who you want taking shots. Obviously, Fournier playing well the last couple of games. This is all you want to see. You just have to apply it to a good team and see if it works. So I am interested to see it.
Well, I'll say this too. This will be a great moment for Tristan Thompson to run out there, get back into action, and have a good game.
And just foul the shit out of Embiid a bunch.
Hey, again, in this matchup, this is why Thompson's here. It was a disaster the first time, but go out there and give it another try. This is where you want him. You want him for this matchup. You want him for Milwaukee. You want him for Miami.
I forgot. Jaylen ate up Simmons last game, huh?
Yeah.
I was trying to say that I'm also interested in that matchup because that's been a nice little.
Remember the crossover, step back move? Yeah.
He ate him up, man. And Simmons is as good as it gets there.
This should be a fun one. This is gonna be a TNT one, probably, right?
Yep, it's on TNT. Yeah,
nice.
At the Garden. It's a great way towards the end of this homestand.
Then you wonder, does Kemba play in that Knicks game at this point? Where so far into the season.
Question. Do you guys think which game is more important, and which one do you have a better chance to win? Would you consider resting Kemba against Philly so he plays against the Knicks? Seeing as no?
Probably not.
That's like
you want him in that matchup against the Sixers. I don't have an issue with him not playing the second night of back-to-backs because that's not how it's done in the playoffs. So it's all about getting him ready for playoff.
You want to see how you stack up here. Yeah.
And this is the Philadelphia 76ers. Yeah, you can't. You got to take on this challenge. You got to play your best bodies.
It's gonna be a round one matchup.
Yeah.
The way it's stacking up in the East.
Yeah, well, that fourth playoff spot, that fourth playoff seed is wide open. So I mean, really, that's
it was Charlotte. Imagine
4
that.
and 5. I mean, either one. I mean, you want to really avoid 6, 7, and 8.
I mean, it's Miami again, and I think it's Miami's to lose.
Celtics are 1-0 against them.
Yeah, but it is. It's unreal how tight it is. It's one game in the loss column right now from the Celtics to the Heat at 4. I mean, it's one game. It's one game. Period. So
crazy. I mean,
again, I guarantee you guys the Celtics are going to be 4. I'll make that declaration now.
Okay. Get ready for apology cam. Cue this one up if it happens.
I just think they're better than all these teams. They're fully healthy.
Don't sleep on my Pacers.
I'm still here.
I'm that ninth seed right
You're
now.
gonna need an apology, Cam, for that one.
Well, they've had a wild season, so let's.
The Celtics haven't.
Well, they've probably had a wilder season.
No.
Celtics. Trades and guys missing time and.
Yeah,
all right, trade. Fair enough.
It's a completely different team than it was when I made those.
They shut the lights out on Bobby.
Yeah.
They said, Bobby, you don't have to go home, but you have to,
We're going to shut them out here, too. We are back on Tuesday and Wednesday. And again, we have a new sponsor coming, and we will talk about it. We may have a show tomorrow night, not determined yet. We may do something tomorrow night to introduce the sponsor and just to talk about other stuff going in and around the team.
Do it. Let me know.
Garden Report Daily.
Yeah. Stay tuned for
that. Ready to go.
We keep talking Garden Report Daily. Again, I do want to remind people to subscribe to our YouTube channel for all you Celtics out there watching. Thanks.
Thanks, I guess.
Thanks for watching.
I hope they can leave a positive review too. Say something negative and say something positive. Come on.
I don't care. Say whatever. We like all of it, and we like having you all on.
We'll take both.
Yeah, and obviously having you on here every night. So thank you again, everybody. Subscribe to our YouTube channels, all the podcasts.
On the numbers on the Easter side.
Yeah, exactly.
Joe Sweet,
Heavy.com and the Causeway Street Podcast. Bobby Manning, CLNS Media, Celtics Blog, Boston Sports Journal, and hold on 1 second.
Dome Theory.
Yeah, Dome Theory. CLNS Media. Thank you again, all of you out there. Thank you, Marcus, again. Marcus
Jimmy
Smart.
John podcast coming soon.
Jimmy John, shout out to Marcus. Marcus is a real one.
Huh?
Maybe we'll get
after the game.
Maybe we'll get Marcus on the Jimmy John first episode.
That's what everyone's waiting for.
Should be an interesting one. I'll moderate.
Yeah. Hi, Marcus. I think you're overrated, and it wouldn't be terrible if you
keep up the good work, Marcus.
If you were traded.
Haters.
Marcus, when those
listen to the haters, Marcus.
When those shifty guards get by you, it's a home run.
I think you get toasted on defense, and I want you to shoot way less. How are you? It's nice to meet you.
Podcast presented by.
Yeah, I know exactly who you are.
And I've wanted to trade you forever. But what are you doing?
Yeah.
Go make that.
I do love the robe though.
First NBA defense. Go ahead, Marcus. Do your thing.
Yeah, do your thing. That's all right.
Do you?
Yeah, you do you.
Hey, everyone's been screaming about Marcus forever, and what is it? Year 8 now. It's gone, or year 6. It's gone pretty good. Year 7. So I guess you just got to keep doing him.
It's been that long. Yeah, you're right.
All right.
It's been that long. Anyway, happy Easter for those of you, if that's your thing.
Yes.
For my Greek / Orthodox buddies out there, we got another month.
That's right.
A month.
We'll wish you guys Easter.
Greek Easter.
Greekster, yeah.
I thought it was like a week or two. Never mind.
It's 4 weeks this time. It's a big gap. Before Bobby gets kicked out here, we're gonna wrap it up. So we'll see you guys possibly tomorrow.